Hi there team, just a quick video on feedback, the types of feedback and when it's best to receive that feedback. So here we go. First of all, we need to look at what is learning. So learning is the acquisition of knowledge or skills through study, experience or being taught. In sport or physical education, we talk about learning and skill acquisition. So the definition of skill acquisition is the science that underpins movement, learning and execution and is more commonly termed motor learning and control. Now, in order to learn a skill, it's really important to receive feedback. So that's where feedback comes into this. I think it's one of the most important things in learning a skill is providing the learner with appropriate feedback. So here goes. There are two types of feedback: internal feedback or kinesthetic feedback and augmented feedback, which is external feedback. So the internal feedback is naturally that you information that you'd naturally receive through the feel of the shot, maybe sometimes the sound. It's like if you pick up a rugby ball, go to kick a rugby ball to touch, you know instantly that you've kicked the ball well or you haven't kicked it well. With golf, for example, you pick up that golf club, hit the ball, and you know straight away whether it was a sweet shot. So that's internal or kinesthetic feedback. Augmented feedback is all the feedback outside of what you'd receive yourself. So it comes from your surroundings. So it could come from a coach or a video. Those are the two main sources of augmented feedback. So there's two types of augmented feedback. There's knowledge of results and knowledge of performance. Firstly, knowledge of results. That's where you know almost instantly whether you've got the result that you wanted or you didn't. So in golf, for example, whether you get the ball in the hole, you know you've done something right. If you miss, you know you've done something wrong. Volleyball, for example, you go up for a spike, you hit the ball into the net, you know you've done something wrong. If you hit the ball out the back, you know you've done something wrong. If you really nail that shot and it goes into court, you know you've done something right. So it's what the result of the skill is. So it's a very, very simple form of feedback. Knowledge of performance is our technical information as to what we've done right or what we've done wrong. So it could be our coach or video giving us some kind of information as to what we've done right or wrong. So that's that technical information. So when is feedback given? Feedback can be terminal or can be concurrent. So concurrent feedback is when it's received during the performance. Terminal is feedback that's received on completion of the performance. So what I'd like you to do is think about some examples of terminal and some examples of concurrent feedback and perhaps relate it to golf. Use this terminology in your assignments. I really, really encourage you to use this terminology and move forward from there. So again, when is feedback given? For internal feedback, it happens anyway. It happens very naturally. Some people are really good at picking it up. Some people aren't. Normally, our beginner learners aren't so good at picking up internal feedback because they're not quite sure of how the skill should feel. But advanced people advanced in that skill, or people that are very, very good at sport in general, are very good. They're very kinesthetically aware. If you're very good at knowing where your body is in time and space and knowing what your body's doing, it's a really powerful form of feedback. So we really try and encourage learners to give themselves some internal feedback. So when should we use augmented feedback? Never, because it hinders performance. Is that true? It's not needed, learning happens anyway. Or it's essential, so we use it as much as possible. So bang in as much feedback as possible. Which one's true? Well, we probably need to think a little bit more in depth about this. So it really depends on the type of skill and the ability of the learner. It's not needed when the feedback is redundant or the learner has a high level of knowledge of what they're doing. So our advanced learners perhaps don't need so much feedback. Do we give as much as possible? we need to be really careful not to overload our beginner learners, because if they've got too much information, it's hard to process. Also, if you're constantly giving feedback, they can begin to rely on that feedback, which it's really important to encourage them to think about how the skill feels. So maybe just leave it to them to get to know how that skill feels before, if you give instead of giving too much feedback. So, should we identify errors in technique, or should we identify correct technique? So studies have shown that it's important for skill improvement to identify errors, and it's important for motivation and confidence to identify correct technique. So we need to keep remembering that it's not only important to identify errors, but it's important to, you know, identify the things that people are doing well, because positive feedback is really important for motivation. Should we be descriptive or prescriptive in our feedback? So descriptive describes the movement that's happening, and prescriptive tells a person what to do what to do to correct it. So the research has shown that for beginners, you need to be prescriptive, because if you describe the movement, they may not understand that because they're only beginning. So really be prescriptive, really tell them what they need to do to correct that skill. And for our more advanced learners, maybe in their associative or autonomous stage of learning, if you just describe the movement that they did, then maybe they can correct their mistakes themselves, because again, it's more powerful if they come up with the solution to the problem. So which is best, knowledge of results or knowledge of performance? What we're going to do from here is we're going to talk about this more in class, and what I want you to think of is the stage of learning that a learner might be in, the motivation levels of that learner, and the type of skill that they would be performing, and so how that relates to whether you'd use knowledge of results or knowledge of performance. So I'll give you a sheet. Please answer the questions provided, and the last thing I'd like you to do is formulate a question based on this video that you can bring to class. Thanks very much.